Hey everybody, welcome to the Chasing Freedom podcast with Noah and Jeff.
In this show, we're going to dive deep into flips, wholesales, holding rentals, and creatively structuring deals,
so that we can show you how you can achieve that lifestyle of freedom that you desire.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Chasing Freedom show with Noah and Jeff, except for today, it's just Noah. And our super special guest, my good friend, Rob LaRue, who we met at the Maui Mastermind. Let me give you guys a quick introduction to who Rob is and what he does in real estate. Rob is a veteran of the house hacking strategy. He does small multifamily. He built this business on the back of the BRRRR strategy. He started in California and eventually ended up in the St. Louis area, where he continues to buy cash flowing rentals. Through many trials and tribulations, Rob now has about 75 units composed of low income, market rent, and student housing. He just completed his first syndication, a 36-unit student housing complex. In his free time, Rob is an avid surfer, swimmer, yogi, and traveler. And yes, I can attest to Rob's ability to surf. He killed it while the rest of us were falling on our backs. So, Rob, welcome to the show, man. I'm so excited to have you.
Thanks for having me. No, I'm excited. That was a really nice kickoff. It's much better hearing you say it. That pumped me up.
It's always fun to hear someone else talk good about you than try to talk good about ourselves, right? Then it's just weird. Cool, man. Well, what I'd love to dig into first is I'd love to hear about your first deal and maybe even a little bit of the why. Like, why are you in real estate? Why? I mean, because you could have done anything, man. Like, after meeting you, like, you have this unlimited potential. You've got this natural draw where, like, people just surround you and they want to hear your story. And so I feel like with some of those abilities that you have, those natural skill sets, you really could have done anything. So why real estate?
Yeah. Thanks, Noah. So I'll give you kind of the high level of my story. And then we'll get into some of the first deals I did. So I grew up in San Diego. I ended up going to school in Santa Barbara. I went to UCSB. I studied neuroscience. I thought I was going to go down the doctor route.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And I always thought I wanted to be a doctor. And kind of third year in school, I took an entrepreneurship class as just like an elective. And the professor had talked about, and I was feeling a little confused at the time and wasn't really sure that's the path I wanted to go down. And so the professor had asked us to think about the things we've done in our past, just like growing up. Right. And so I had started an eBay company when I was in 7th grade, and I didn't really like see it as an eBay company. And this is so random. I don't know why I got into this, but I started reading these books on Coca-Cola. And so Coca-Cola, I don't know if I ever told you this story. So Coca-Cola has like this incredible past, right? They're started in the 1800s. They, it's one of the biggest brands in the world now. And through both world wars, everything, they created all these amazing products and literally everything from like pencils to like huge advertisement posters and all that stuff. And I don't know why, I just thought it was really cool. And so I read a couple books on it, and I used to take the city bus I couldn't drive at the time. I used to take the city bus to garage sales and to like antique stores. And I kind of like knew what these things were worth, and they probably like threw me a bone because I was like a kid.
Yeah.
And I would like go in and negotiate for these things. And I made, I think, almost like $15,000 in 7th grade reselling these things on eBay.
No, like Coca-Cola, like vintage products?
Yes. So
no way.
Like one stood out. Like I bought this big, it was probably like 4 foot by 4 foot, like 1930s Coca-Cola advertisement that would have been in like some storefront. And I bought it for, I don't know, $250 at this antique store. And I literally like carried it home on the city bus. It was pretty funny. And I sold it on eBay to a guy in France for $3,000. And
holy smokes, man. I wish I had like a victory bell, because in 7th grade, one, to spend $250 is terrifying, right? Like 7th graders, like that's a lot of money to spend. But then two, I'm curious, what did you do with that money? Because you just netted yourself like $2,200.
I was always pretty good about saving. So I I started like a Vanguard like mutual fund when it must have been freshman year of college or maybe even like 8th grade. And obviously like my parents, helped me be in that mindset. But I just put it away. I was like, this is,
So
I didn't
smart.
spend it. I didn't really. So anyway, point of that story is like looking back on my history, I kind of realized that I've always loved business, entrepreneurship, doing my own thing, building something. So I graduated with a neuroscience degree. I ended up taking a job at Oracle in San Francisco. And so I worked in tech sales for almost 4 years. And I think 3 days into that, and I figured this was like a start, right, to getting into the business world. And I think 3 days into that, I was sitting in my cubicle, cold calling, and I was just thinking to myself, like, Larry Ellison, the founder of Oracle, is most likely on his 300-foot yacht in the Mediterranean right now. And I'm sitting here in this cubicle making him richer. And I just kind of a light bulb went off, and I was like, you know what? A, I'm just never going to be able to build someone else's company. And B, my biological output of energy, right, is the same whether I'm doing it for Larry or whether I'm doing it for myself, right? I'm still getting stressed out. I'm still having like cortisol pumping through my body. I'm still waking up early and making phone calls and like doing all these things. So I'm like, I may as well do it for myself. So 2 years into that, I was finally able to qualify for my first loan. At the time, I didn't really know about hard money lending. I didn't really know about any of that stuff, but I had read the book, The Unfair Advantage by Robert Kiyosaki. So that book made me think about money. And Robert Kiyosaki is obviously very popular, and lots of people kind of had him as their jumping off point into real estate. This book was one of his more unknown ones, but still kind of like changed the way I was thinking about everything. And so I qualified for my first loan, and my first property I bought was in actually Joshua Tree, which is like right outside of Palm Springs.
And that's like booming now. Hopefully you held it.
Booming. Yeah, I unfortunately sold it like 2 years ago to help me build the business in St. Louis.
Right.
But that was the first deal I bought, and it was basically the only affordable real estate in California 6 years ago. Was like the outskirts of Palm Springs.
Yeah.
So I bought this. It was a duplex. I paid $118,000 for it, which is like unheard of.
That's crazy.
You cannot do that in San Francisco, LA, San Diego, any of the places I had lived along the way. Like you couldn't do it. So I bought that duplex. It was rented out when I bought it, and I had kind of like run my back of the napkin numbers, and I was like, okay, this is going to cash flow a little bit. I'd saved up the down payment. And so I made the purchase, and day one it appraised for 150. So I had 30,000 of equity.
Probably just made like your year's salary in one foul swoop of equity, huh?
100%.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, this is sweet. I got 30,000 equity. It's bringing 1,200. I had to put 20% down because it was non-owner occupied. But that was 30,000. So I'd saved that up at 2 years working at Oracle.
Yeah.
And so my note was, 80,000, 90,000. And I was cash flowing a couple $100 a month.
Yeah.
So that was my kickoff into passive real estate investing. That was the first deal I did.
You know what so there's a couple things that I want to pull out there for people listening that I really like about that. So one, you're in a state where traditionally it's very difficult to buy cash flowing assets, right? Like the purchase price is just so high, whether it was 10 years ago, 15 years ago, doesn't matter. At each point, that was a very real thing for investors in California, is that the purchase price is very, very high and it's hard to cash flow.
Yep.
Instead of looking at the problem, you became solutions oriented. You said, yeah, you know what? It probably doesn't work in LA, and it probably doesn't work in San Francisco. And it probably doesn't work, in Santa Barbara because, again, purchase price. But solutions-oriented person, an entrepreneur says, where does it work?
Yeah.
And then you went and found a market where it worked. You started looking, you found the property. And also the other thing that I want to bring up, and it's only because our stories are so similar and I know the grind that you went through to suck it up at a job that you don't like, to be able to qualify for a loan and save that much money. Like you literally saved 1 full year of income probably on 2 years of working.
I think my starting salary at Oracle, and looking back on this, it's criminal that they paid this little, but I think it was like $44,000.
Yeah, that's so funny.
Minus living expenses in San Francisco, like it's nearly impossible to save anything on that.
That was my starting salary at Enterprise, and I stayed with them for 2 years. Same thing, so I could qualify for a loan. And it's difficult. I mean, like luckily I lived in Cracoma, Washington, so it was pretty cheap to live there. But still, like it is difficult to save. And so I know I know what that grind is like, and then like how scary it is too to put this nest egg that you just worked so hard for, because at that point in time we're trading our time for money.
Yes.
So we hold on to money a little bit like tighter, because once you get to the point where you realize you don't have to trade your time for money anymore, you can bring value in exchange for money, and value could be through employees, through creating something that somebody else can't create. You know what I mean? So value add, whatever. But it's very difficult to let go of that money at first.
For sure.
Yeah.
That first check I had to write was really scary.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Like I literally that was my life savings.
Mm-hmm.
Like I remember, putting writing that down payment check and being like, I hope this goes well.
and I think this is an interesting thought process. Every single person I know that's been successful in real estate, I think it's a common denominator among every person at the Maui Mastermind. We all had to be willing to risk everything at some point. Yeah. And I think that is a continual pattern as well, right? Like we continue to have to risk everything at some point. Yes. So I remember like when Jeff and I first started, and like one of the foundational building blocks to us having a successful partnership was he reached out to me after helping me with my house hack. And he's like, hey, I need like 20 grand for this flip. And I had like maybe like 8 or 9 grand left to my name after buying my house. And I put every single dollar into that flip. And at the time, it's only 8 or 9 grand, but that was all that I had. So like I remember like literally him telling me that this was going to be a 60-day flip, and it took like 70. And for those 10 days, I was like, oh my God, dude, I don't know how I'm going to make this house payment. I don't know how I'm going to pay for the car. Like where's our money going to come from to eat? And it was super stressful. And like, again, I feel like we did that again, like probably like 4 months ago. I had a chunky amount of cash stacked away. And, but also too, now, like when I have cash, I'm like, I'm not utilizing it. Like, what am I doing? It shouldn't be just sitting here. Yeah. But like, I just put like a pretty large cash infusion back into our business, and so did he. And so again, like willing to risk it all. Like, I haven't taken money out of my business in probably like 4 months now, which needs to change, but we do it for the sake of growth, right? Like this is the path we desire to be on, and you have to be willing to take the risk to get there.
100%. It's funny. Like, it's funny you say that, because I did this again recently. And I swore to myself I would never put my back against the wall again. Yeah. As bad as it, and I'll tell you the story of like St. Louis and how I grew things, but it's been like 2 or 3 times now, and I keep thinking I'll learn, but like even in the last 2 months, I reinvested so much into some of these properties, and I'm again like I had a good cushion for a while, and I just decided I'm gonna improve these properties. I'm going to raise some rents. I'm going to add a bathroom here. I'm going to, do this here. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh man, it's like the cash is dwindling down in the account. Yeah. It's scary.
It is, man. It's so funny. And I think that, if you really, really want to be successful and you want to build anything that's scalable, you have to be okay with being, you have to become comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Certainly.
And that's something that's very evident by like, I'm excited to hear the rest of the story. So enough of me yabbering. Let's go back to your story. Okay. So you bought this duplex in Joshua Tree.
Yes.
Figured out like, oh man, real estate can actually work. You made a really nice chunky equity swing just from day one. You bought a good deal. So you got $30,000 in equity. So what's next? What happened after that?
So I was pretty excited about that, right? Like the concept, of having someone else pay off your mortgage and put some money in your pocket every month was very exciting, and it was working. this was absolutely nothing to quit your job on. But when I started getting a lot more excited was really learning how to force equity and then pull money out to buy more. So this is where real estate gets really fun for me and interesting. So I got a taste of it on this first deal. So the duplex, when I had the 30,000 of equity when I bought it, about 6 months later, I think I did like a new concrete, backyard patio. I like added a little bit of value and cleaned some things up and replaced the flooring. And, I maybe at the time, I think, market rent, I probably increased it $100 a unit. Mm-hmm. So it was not much, but the more exciting thing was I went back to the bank a year later and I wanted to pull some cash out and refinance, and it appraised for, 200 at that time. And I owed, 80 on it. So I was able to pull out not only my original money, the down payment plus the 10 grand I put into it, but I pulled out an additional like 20 or 30,000 on the new appraised value. Man. And what I did was I used that money as a down payment on a fourplex, like less than a mile away. So now this duplex is cash flowing less because the loan amount is higher, but it still was cash flowing. Like it was still positive cash flow, albeit not very much. Mm-hmm. But then I was able to go buy this other fourplex with theoretically no more money out of my pocket. So I now had these 6 units, and I kind of like rinsed and repeated over the next few years on this Joshua Tree desert area. And I ended up buying one more after that. And this is all while I'm still at Oracle in San Francisco.
Okay.
So that's how this really got started. And I think I had maybe between the 3 properties getting close to 1,000 cash flow. So again, not enough to live on, quit your job on, anything, but enough to be like, okay, I get this. I'm starting to get it.
Yeah.
And this was all with just the original down payment on the first house.
So 30K turned into enough money for how many units? So duplex, fourplex, and then what was the third one?
Duplex, fourplex, and a single family. And the fourplex I bought for $350.
Okay.
So I had to put 25% down on that. So almost 75,000.
Yeah.
And the single family was, I think I paid like 80 or 90,000. So I had to put down 20-ish, a little over 20. So yeah, that original 30,000 turned into, $130,000, $140,000.
Yeah. That's so cool, man. It's the
plus the cash flow.
That's the power of just like taking action, right? Like you could have just sat there and kept being fearful and saying, the duplex wasn't that great and blah, 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 and made all these excuses, but you're like, no, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to figure it out.
100%. I think one of the things that like I tell anyone that asks me about real estate investing is the biggest piece of advice I can give you is to just do it.
Yep.
You
100%.
Can analyze deals all day. You can scour the market. You can look for different markets. You can come up with excuses. I mean, it really does come down to writing that first check and going and getting qualified for the loan and going and calling in your local market a realtor and starting to look at deals. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter if you hit a home run on the first one or the second or the third. It doesn't really matter. It just matters that you start. So that is one of the biggest pieces of advice. Like you just have to do it. You have to take action.
I think that's so powerful, because I think that like, especially when you listen to the, shows with like massive guests, like, you hear, Brandon Turner talk about his $50 million syndication, or sure. I think it's $100 million now. Or you hear somebody else talk about, a flip where they made $250,000. And it's like, yeah, those things happen when you are continually doing the same thing time and time again. But all those guys started with small deals that sometimes didn't make money. Sometimes they lost a little bit of money. But the important part is getting your feet wet, understanding the process, starting to trust yourself as an operator. I would say too, in alignment to what you just said, the first deal is arguably the most important deal.
Yeah.
because it just teaches you that you can make mistakes and you can recover. You can do this, right? Like you can go out and actually buy real estate and be a real estate investor.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And it's funny too, because it carries over into like even though we flipped, I don't know, maybe like 50 single family homes at this point. So we flipped a ton of homes, but it doesn't mean that my fear is gone of like going into like larger multifamily deals, right? Like I own like a couple fourplexes here and there, and like still the thought of doing like a 50 unit still scares me. So it's like, again, like even I need to take my own advice and be like, no, you just got to go do it. You got to go make your mistakes, figure out what you did wrong, figure out how to be better on the next one, then go do it again.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is what happened on the 36 unit that I just bought. I had most of my experience was in 4 units and under, and I'd bought a lot of those. And but I was scared. It was my first bigger deal. It was my first syndication, taking money from friends, family, money that I raised, and But at a certain point, you gotta jump in.
Yeah, you do. You really do.
And it's funny, the things that I've learned from that deal. It's wild. That deal has been arguably the easiest, smoothest deal I've ever done.
Really? And it's the biggest. That's what's so funny.
It's the biggest.
Yeah.
So,
and you would have never learned that unless you just went out and did it.
Exactly.
Yep. You have to be, this industry is not for people who are risk adverse. Like you can't avoid risk.
Absolutely.
The reward is tied to the risk. And there are certain things you can do to minimize it, right? You can bring on partners.
Yes.
You can pay for courses. You can join mastermind. Like there's a lot of things you can do to minimize your risk, but at the end of the day, it's never zero.
Absolutely. And I think it's a false, like safety, mechanism feeling. I don't know what the word is, but, I'd almost argue it's risky to not do this because, I mean, if you look at what's happening right now, I mean, we're printing money like crazy. So the value of your dollar sitting in a safe checking account is not very safe right now.
No.
So, I would even argue that even if you don't cash flow, like even just putting your money into real estate and having debt is a good bet. So,
dude, man, you were dropping some gold nuggets today for everybody listening. Okay, I got to pull that back out. And then, Travis, if you're listening, we got to pull this out and make this a little segment on Instagram because that was really, really good. So let's dive a little deeper into that. So right now, if you guys are listening to what Rob just said, he just said if you have money sitting in your 401k, in retirement accounts, in self-directed IRAs, whatever it may be, your dollar is losing its value, meaning you have $100,000 sitting there today. You think that $100,000 buys you a certain amount of things, right? Let's use like a car, for example. $100,000 right now buys you like a decent Porsche or entry level, sports car or something like this, right? So that's what it gets you. In 3 years, if inflation continues the way it's continuing, $100,000 will end up getting you like a Chevy Suburban.
Yeah.
Because the dollar becomes worth less, right? So what Rob is suggesting is park it into assets that appreciate over time because appreciation will beat the inflation. So your dollar will still be worth in 10 years what it's worth today. It's the same thing. Like we go back and look at candy bars. You used to be able to buy candy bars for 5 cents. Now they're $1.50. That's what inflation does to the dollar.
So, and to add on to that, so I'm self-admittedly I'm still learning about this, right? But one concept that really clicked for me recently, like in real life, right? Real life example. So they always say that real estate is a hedge against inflation, right? So what does that actually mean? So, because I didn't know, I just heard people say that. So what that means is that if you go get a mortgage for $100,000, right? That mortgage does not change whether or not inflation's happening. So if you're in a high inflationary period, which is what we're in right now, as the price of goods goes up, as the dollar becomes less valuable, and it typically wages will go up as well with this. So if a doctor was making $150,000 and it's inflationary period for a couple of years, maybe their salary becomes $175,000. Your mortgage does not change.
Right.
So that $100,000 mortgage 3 years ago, in effect, is worth less, and it's quote easier to pay off because more money is being put into the system. But there's no like inflationary adjustment to your mortgage. They don't say, oh, well, actually your mortgage is 125,000 now because the value of the dollar went down and everyone's wages are going up. So that is what a hedge against inflation is when it comes to debt. And that's really exciting, right? In an inflationary period. So that is why I'm trying to personally, like, I don't want to have a bunch of cash in my bank account necessarily right now.
No.
I mean, you want enough always to like cover expenses and unforeseen things, but yeah, I mean, and you can feel it. Like I just paid $2.50 for a gas station coffee yesterday.
That's crazy.
And I'm sure part of this has to do with supply chain issues,
Right.
but certainly there is inflation going on. You can start to feel it now. So I like that that real estate and getting good debt is a hedge against that. So.
Oh, 100%. So I think one of the things that really catapulted your success early on, from what I understand about your story, was something called the Bur Method. I talk about this a lot on other podcasts and other shows. But I think what would be really cool for our listeners is to hear some of the things that you might do a little differently and some of the things that allowed you to scale up really quickly. Because, dude, it's pretty rare to find super young guys in this industry that have also built up decent sized portfolios and had a track record of success, and you're one of them. So let's definitely dive into that.
Cool. I appreciate it. Okay. So let me give you how I got into St. Louis. Cause this is when I really got into the Bur Method. So I had those couple units in Southern California and I had gone on I quit my job at it wasn't at Oracle anymore. It was another tech company in San Francisco. And I had gone on a trip for 6 months and went to 30 countries. It was a great experience for me. I came back and I was ready to rock and roll and take the risk of going all in on real estate. And so I was talking to a friend and just talking about like markets in the US that I could buy positive cash flow real estate. And he had a friend or a brother, as he said, in this place called St. Louis. And I had never been to the Midwest. I no ties at all. But the friend was a realtor and sent me a deal for $15,000. And I honestly thought it was a mistake. I thought they forgot a zero. So he was like, no, it's real. And it'll rent for 800 on Section 8. And it might need like 5 or 10 grand to work. And I'm like doing the math in my head, and like that's $500 cash flow positive and maybe no loan or a very small one. So I was like, okay, I'll bite. So I bought this thing sight unseen, and I packed up everything I owned, drove across the country. And this was, it was in Ferguson. And so I basically drove in my Mazda CX-5 with everything I owned, and I slept on an air mattress in that house for 6 months, rehabbed it. I found some guys to help me get the rehab done, and I rented it out for the 800, and it was real. And the neighborhood was not, bad. It was fine. And then I ended up doing that a little bit further down the street, and I had 2 at that point. And over the next 3-ish years, I thought this was going to be a summer,
like just, I'm going to do a little summer traveling. I'll go flip some properties. We'll have some fun.
I literally thought this was like a summer experiment. Exactly. And I ended up buying, a bunch more in St. Louis over those next 3 years. And it was in, I went from those kind of smaller, cheap properties to more, I got into student housing. I started buying like young professional stuff, doing bigger renovations and like higher purchase prices to get in. And throughout all of this, I, like we talked about, had my back against the wall. I mean, everything that could have gone wrong went wrong during this experience. I had a business partnership that failed. I had a contractor that stole $50,000, left the country, just gone. I could not qualify for loans at the time because I had quit my job.
Right.
So I was getting hard money loans at 15% interest.
What year was this?
This was 2017. It's 2017, 2018. Yeah.
Man, 15% interest is insane.
15%. I mean, I got it down a little bit, but they were like, this is your first one. What do you?
Yeah, yeah, they have to minimize their risk. So
So, I had six figures on a credit card. So, I mean, I had my back. When I say I had my back against the wall, I mean, my monthly payments at one point between hard money, credit cards, was north of like 25,000. Yeah. So imagine being like a 26-year-old and like being out there by yourself. It was a lot. I bit off a lot. So I ended up hanging in there because I believe in this so much.
Yeah.
Right. I believed in, having that freedom and really just building this thing that I wasn't going to fail. So I just kept getting up and figuring out ways. I had to sell one here or there. I had to sell the California properties. But I eventually was able to qualify for loans, like conventional loans.
Mhm.
I refinanced out of all the hard money. And this was maybe 2 years ago. And I got everything stabilized and just so happened the market was doing well. So I was able to, get good tenants. Rents kept going up. I was getting more rent than I thought. And eventually like the portfolio started to really come together. And that's kind of like how the story went. And, we can start talking about specific deals, but the Bur Method was the way that I was able to do this with minimal I have partners on a couple deals, but the majority of my portfolio was just me. And the way I was able to do that was the Bur Method. And I didn't even know, to be honest, I wasn't like huge into bigger pockets or anything at the time. So I didn't even really know what the Bur Method was, but I kind of stumbled onto it by accident, just like in real life. And that is how I was able to, without having any other source of income, to be able to keep like buying more deals.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's the background on the story and where I'm at today. And then now we can talk about Bur. If you want to talk about
let's do it. So let's talk about like maybe the difference in financial understanding between probably like someone who's done a little bit of self-education in real estate and someone who hasn't. I think the traditional thought process is someone says, okay, I've got 30 grand. That means I can buy one house. Holy crap. How am I ever going to get to my goal of owning 10 homes because it took me 2 years to save my $30,000? And what the Bur Method teaches us and squashes this traditional thought of, man, I have to have a 20% down payment for every single house is buy something that's distressed, increase the value enough to be able to get a refinance on it for more than you bought it for, plus your cash into it, pull everything out. Now you have your cash just like you did in your first duplex. You still own the property, but now everything you've plugged in is back out, so you can go do it again. So yeah, let's dive into if you got a specific deal or if you've got some specific strategies that allowed you to be successful within this Bur strategy. We'd love to hear it.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna tell you about like two of my favorite deals I've ever done. Okay. So this is 3 years, 4 years into my real estate journey, and these are like the home run deals. Right. I want everyone to know, like, I've lost well into the hundreds of thousands of dollars along the way. Okay. But these deals are exciting. They're fun. So I'm gonna tell you about these. So the first deal, let's talk about it was a student housing deal. Okay. And near Wash U in St. Louis. And I paid $375,000 for this deal. Okay. And it was an interesting one. So one thing to keep in mind, especially if you're starting and you're kind of just you're building things up from scratch, you don't have, you weren't given a trust fund, like that's a different game. Like we're
bootstrapping. Yeah.
We're bootstrapping. So you have to, here's my advice. You have to find value add deals no matter what, like you said, either deals that you're like doing big rehabs on. Another way to add value, it doesn't mean necessarily that you have to do massive rehabs. Adding value could be buying it super under market rent or super under market price. Yeah. Like I have bought deals that, at like 60% of the true value, just because off market, whatever, distressed seller, and I can turn around and refinance and get all my money back out. So that's a value add deal. Knowing market rents when someone isn't at market rent, and you know that you can raise the rents by doing almost nothing, that's value add too.
Right.
So it doesn't necessarily mean you have to do a huge rehab, but so this particular property was actually a single family home, and I turned it into a duplex.
Let's go.
So,
I like that.
So this was a unique one, but again, kind of looking for creative ways to do this in a tough market. So I paid $375 for this deal, and I put and this was on a conventional loan. Okay.
Oh, so you qualified for a conventional loan on this one?
Qualified for a conventional loan. So I think I put 5% down on this deal. So 5% of 375, call it 20 grand. Okay. I put about 125,000 into the rehab. So I'm in it for 500,000.
For anybody who may not know what that means in a rehab, that's a big rehab.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a big rehab. I pretty much gutted the whole thing out. New structure. I added another entrance. I put a wall up in the middle to create these 2 units. So I'm in it I paid for the renovation on this one. So I was in it for the 20 down and then the 125 of cash that I used to do this renovation. Okay. So that's 145 that I'm in it for. So each unit, so when the renovation was done, the one unit was getting 2,800, one unit was getting 2,400. So my total rents, what is that for?
Was that just market rents, or is that like per room rent for student housing?
Market rents.
Wow, that's insane.
Yeah, I actually didn't do, and that's why I'm telling you guys about this deal, because despite it being students, I ran it still kind of as a regular rental. Yeah. So it was just a regular lease. It wasn't by bed. So I'm bringing in 5,200, and I had done this renovation. So I went back to the bank and I had it reappraised when this renovation was done, and it appraised, I think, for 650. So I was able to pull out all of the cash that I was in it for. So my loan at the time, because remember, I bought it for 375. My loan was, 90%, 95% of that, which is call it 350, and it appraised for 650. So I was able to pull out all of that 145 that I was in it for. So I was effectively in it for nothing. And all of my debt payments, PITI plus expenses, all of that stuff basically came out to around $3,200 a month. So I was cash flowing $2,000 a month on this deal.
Holy crap, man.
$0 into the deal. And it was a completely gutted brand new building. So that was a really exciting deal for me. They don't all go.
No, yeah, they definitely don't all turn out like that.
So that was a cool one. And the exciting part about that was I actually realized, looking at it as a student rental, and if I do lease it by room and pay utilities and kind of change my strategy for next year, I'm doing that, and it increased my cash flow up to almost 4,000 for one duplex.
Can we walk through just a little bit of the student housing numbers, because that's kind of intriguing? So you do per bed, not per bedroom, right? Do you ever do 2 beds in a bedroom?
So no, it's it is so the way that I lease it is kind of like by student. So each unit is three bedrooms.
Okay. And
so I changed the model to be like, okay, it's this much per year per student. So 3 bedrooms, 16,000 per year per student.
Wow. Holy crap.
And that includes Wi-Fi, electric, all utilities, parking, the whole thing. But when I ran my numbers, it ended up being a lot more cash flow positive.
And then do you have vacancies in the summer then?
So I run 12-month leases.
Okay.
So what's interesting is the school only leases for 8 months, right? Just the semesters. And that's actually a competitive advantage for me, being an off-campus option, is you guys don't have to like move your stuff immediately the day the semester starts or ends. You can kind of have the summer to like store stuff if you want, but the pricing is still the same.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. And as a yearly, if you have just like this yearly fee, I think students have an easier time, and probably parents who are paying for it justifying it, because
Absolutely.
otherwise I've seen other student rental programs where it's like you get charged less in the summer to try to incentivize you to stay. And then you're
Yeah.
dealing with these fluctuations and vacancies and property turnovers, which cost money.
Yeah.
I like what you're doing there. That's going to be cool, man.
I'm really excited about it. I think I'm gonna be doubling down on the student housing stuff.
Yeah.
But so that was an example of a BRRRR that I did with a conventional loan, and
Mm-hmm.
then funding the rehab myself. That is not an option for everyone when you're
Right.
beginning. So I'm definitely cognizant of that, and I've done many deals where I've used hard money,
Mm-hmm.
either a big company like Lending Home, and usually a big company will make you put 10% down,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll fund the acquisition and the renovation. Also, I highly recommend networking within your community to find like a private hard money lender.
Yep.
So I have a smaller time private guy that I borrow to do smaller deals,
Mm-hmm.
and he'll fund sometimes 100% of the deal. And so again, real estate and real estate investing, what we do is it's this little puzzle with different variables, and some of those variables are ARV, like what's it going to be done when what's it going to be worth when it's done. What is your rehab cost, acquisition cost, and you kind of plug these different things in to hopefully, if you do it right, to be at $0 out of your own pocket when it's all said and done.
Mm-hmm.
So, using these hard money guys to do acquisition plus renovation, and knowing that if you, most banks just average numbers, 75% of the ARV,
Mm-hmm.
that's what they'll loan up to.
Right.
So a really quick, easy way to like look at deals is looking at the purchase price, multiply it by 0.75,
Mm-hmm.
and then subtract out your renovation costs. Can pretty much get you to around, where you want to be on an offer to get all your money out on the back end.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really great way to be like very quickly, hey, am I going to be able to BRRRR this? And do I have to leave money in the deal? And everyone's
Exactly.
strategy is different. Like, we are rehabbing like 3 big single family homes out here in Boise. Boise doesn't work for a BRRRR market, right? Like the purchase price is just very, not that you can't find it, but we find really deeply discounted deals because we flip. So
Yes.
we're keeping these 3 single family homes, and the rents just don't justify the loan payments. However, be solutions oriented, just like you were at the start of your journey, right? We found out that through Airbnb-ing these, we can actually still cash flow.
There you go.
And for us, like, we're not going to pull any money out. It's not a cash out refi. It's just a rate and term. But that works for us. Like if we sell more flips, we have more taxes, which creates more problems. And we don't really want more taxes this year. We'd rather keep a couple properties. So, that would be one thing I would say to the listeners too, is like, and you said this too, you don't have to make a $200,000, equity swing or cash out refi or whatever it may be. Find what works for you. And honestly, I think a very tried and true building a foundation of single family homes or multifamily homes through the Bur Method, as long as you can leave either a minimal amount or pull at least all of your, at least like 90 to 95% of your cash out, you're still stacking properties for less money than you would buy on a traditional conventional loan. So
Absolutely.
that would be success to me still. For me,
Absolutely.
I would still BRRRR if I had to leave 10 to 15 grand in every single property.
Absolutely. And right, like that, the point of BRRRR isn't always to get all your money out. It's going to swing, some you'll make money, some you'll get all your money out, some you'll keep money in.
Yeah.
But the point of it is just to make the money that you have now go as far as it can.
Yep, absolutely. Well, let's do this real quick. Let's talk about real quick where you're at now, what you're looking to do, and maybe whatever metric you want to define it as the next 3 to 6 months to a year. And then let's tie up the end of the show with either some books that you recommend, some podcasts you recommend, any advice you've ever gotten that really changed the trajectory of your investing and real estate career.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And before we wrap up the Burr, the one thing I forgot that I specifically wanted to talk about was uh, there is a really cool way to do the Burr method that I had not learned before until this deal. And so most, I think local banks would do this. It's probably not like a Chase or someone like that. But what I did on the last deal that I bought, it was a duplex, and I found a bank, and I think my renovation budget was probably like 75,000.
Okay.
I found a bank that would do the purchase plus rehab. Okay. And I had to put the 20% down of the total cost. But instead of the 20% going into the deal and having a smaller loan amount, so say your purchase is 80 and your rehab's 20, that's $100,000 total. A bank would require 20% of that $100,000 total. So they would require 20,000. Okay. And your loan would be for 80,000. Now, what this bank I found let me do was put that 20,000 into a savings account at the bank, or actually an interest bearing account. It was like a money market or something. Okay. So all I had to do, well, I still had to have the cash, but I put it at the bank as collateral for that 20% down, and they gave me 100% loan. Okay.
Oh, wow.
Now, once I hit the ARV that they were comfortable with, so meaning once I actually did the renovation and it appraised for that, the value that they were comfortable with, they would release that cash back to me. And so this is, I like was shocked that a bank would do this. I'd never heard of this before. Anyone really talk about it, right?
No.
I heard hard money. I heard blah, blah, blah. But that is truly like a cool way to do zero money, I guess, out of pocket investing, although it takes money to do it, but the bank will actually loan you 100%. And when you hit the ARV, they release that cash back to you.
Wow.
And I actually just did this, and I had the cash released 2 days ago. So it's real.
Let's do, you know what? So, we're running out of time on the show, but what I want to do, no. The reason I'm saying this is what I want to do with that is I want to do, not necessarily another podcast, but like a mini episode, and it could just be way more casual. Like I'll do it from my office and whatever. But we should bring that out, go into like a 10-minute breakdown on the advice. Yeah, I can show you the spreadsheet. Let's do that. So let's plan another meeting after this, maybe later on this week or whatever, and let's go deeper on that. Cause dude, that's pretty cool.
It's really cool. Exciting. Yeah. I was very excited to find out that was an option in the real estate world.
I could just see it right now. Like I already know people are going to reach out and they're going to want more information on that. So let's get ahead of it. Let's just go make a video on it. Cool, brother. Okay, cool. So what's next for you?
Yeah. So really it's twofold. One is I've been just so scrappy and hustling on like the core tenets of the business, meaning finding deals, renovating them. I mean, I GC'd everything myself. I managed everything myself for a very long time. So my accounting is a disgusting nightmare. The way I was managing buildings was, texting tenants, and I really didn't have a good system. So a big priority next 3 to 6 months is getting that cleaned up to actually run a real business. I just hired my first property manager to work for just my portfolio.
Nice.
Getting her ramped up, and getting everything onto my new software to keep it clean. I have a new CPA that I'm working with. That's great. That's helping me clean up the books. So that's a big priority. And then on top of that, I'm going to double down on the student housing stuff. So I want to buy more of those deals and get creative on, renting per student and buying in these nice areas because it is a very nice area, and it's a way to cash flow and have equity. It's a nice balance. It's kind of like the Airbnb model, in a way. And then I'm really excited about syndications too. That 36 unit is going really well, and knock on wood. and I want to do some bigger deals. I enjoy pitching these things to people and raising money.
Yeah.
And it's exciting. You know, I like working with people. I'm doing the stuff alone while you get to keep 100%, which is nice. I'd rather own a smaller piece of something bigger with and share the wins and sometimes losses with others. So that's what's next for me.
There's a multiple on, there's like a multiplying effect on doing things with other people. I don't know if it's because the confidence gets boosted. If it's because our abilities get added together in some like weird like combination of skill sets. There's also a lot of accountability. Like I think that sometimes Jeff and I are blindsided by the fact that we don't realize how valuable it is that we can hold each other accountable. So like we're doing all the pods right now. Like we're creating all these pods within the Maui Mastermind group, me and Heather, and trying to put it together for people. And I'm like, do we really need to do this, this, and this? And Heather's like, well, you forget that you guys have each other to hold each other accountable. Everybody else doesn't.
Yeah.
And there's a multiplying effect on that, on the outcome of what you're after, what you're out trying to accomplish, right? So, no, man, it sounds like you're really setting up like this foundation to go bigger and bigger and bigger. And you're just trying to line everything up smooth. So what you have here operates less. It operates without needing your attention all the time. And then you can go do more and more and bigger deals. Cool, man. Any podcasts that you listen to that or books that you've read that you would recommend to the listeners?
So look, you guys probably are going to get your best real estate info on BRRRR. I'll recommend some other podcasts that have nothing to do with real estate because they're just good about life and mentality and making the best of, you know, living a good life. And so I really like the Huberman Lab podcast. He is a Stanford neuroscience professor. The guy is he's awesome. So he's got stuff on motivation. The thing I love about him is he's deep in the science, but he ties it back to real life.
And that's cool.
You can listen if you have no science background, but it's not just like, you know, hocus pocus crap that's like, hey, you know, wake up and tell yourself you're going to have a good day. And like, sure, there's some merit to that stuff. But this guy's like, hey, you know, if you get sunlight, you know, at this time in the morning, it actually like turns on these specific neurons that give you a boost of cortisol or give you a boost of energy. And like, it's very science-based, you know, motivation, energy, discipline. And I love that. So check that one out. And it's not just motivation. He's got stuff on like all kinds, depression, like everything.
Okay. I'm going to listen to it on my drive back, to the office. That actually sounds pretty, I'm excited to dig into that one.
I'll send you one of my favorite episodes.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
So that's Huberman Lab podcast. I would check that out. And then books, man, I again, like the one book that really changed it for me was The Unfair Advantage, Robert Kiyosaki. If you haven't read that, it's a good one, but it's probably similar to like Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to be a little different here. I'm going to give you a really fun, book that I read recently. It's called Red Notice.
Okay.
It's nonfiction, but it's about this investment banker that goes to Russia and like goes through all this crazy stuff. And it was just really entertaining. I couldn't put it down. So that's just a really fun book. So
that sounds awesome. Yeah.
Because it's a good book.
Heck yeah, man. That sounds fun.
You won't learn anything about real estate.
No, I like it, man. I'm sure that people appreciate having some different perspective and not being, you know, recommended the same 5 things by everybody. But, dude, how do people get a hold of you, man? Like, I'm sure, like, as people listen to the show, like, you know, maybe they're interested in the syndication, or maybe they're interested in some of these markets you're in. But like, what's the best way for the listeners to reach out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So, my email is rob@pointbreakcap.com. So my company's Point Break Capital. So that's really easy. If you want to email me, my website, pointbreakcapital.com, has, you know, some case studies, cool stuff we've done. And then I document some rehabs and things along my journey, personal and professional, on my Instagram. So it's just, Rob, ROB-D LaRue. So Rob D LaRue is, and that's ROBDLARUE.
Perfect. And we'll put all this in the show notes too. And then I'm going to put your personal cell phone and your personal address down there as well. So anyone could I'm just kidding, dude.
No.
You're like, oh yeah, perfect, man. Throw it down there. That's great. Cool, brother.
Just a reactionary.
well, it sounds like we'll be back on the phone and doing another video breaking down the conversations with those banks. So guys, keep an eye out for that. That may even get released before this podcast, but we'll see the timing of everything. So, Rob, I appreciate you coming on, man. Thank you for sharing your knowledge of BRRRR investing and real estate with the listeners. I'm sure that they're going to gain a lot from this. You guys feel free to reach out to Rob. He's a super humble dude, and he's probably more than happy to answer you guys' questions about real estate if you have any. And if you're trying to get started, like, you guys really should be reaching out to the guests on these shows, because they're full of knowledge. They've made the mistakes. They've spent years educating themselves. So, in all honesty, that's how I got started. Is I reached out to Elliott Smith. He was on a Bigger Pockets episode. Now, he wasn't the kindest to me when I reached out. So if you're hearing this, I'm just reminding you of how you treated me.
I will be nice to you.
Rob's not going to tell you to F off, but he didn't really say that. But anyway, so guys, take the action. Reach out. Rob, thank you so much for coming on, brother.
Yeah, I appreciate it. No, it was good catching up.
Okay, we'll see you, man.
All right, bye.
All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the Chasing Freedom podcast with Noah and Jeff.
Please subscribe to our YouTube channel in the show notes below. And if you ever want to get a hold of us, feel free to do it via our Instagrams. You can also follow us for our funny content on TikTok.